If you find yourself doing that a lot throughout the day, then you might have some dysfunctional breathing. Wait, what'd you call me? If this sounds like you, then you're not alone. A lot of people sigh a lot throughout the day. Now, if you sigh every now and then, that's not a big deal. It's actually normal. But frequently sighing or sighing too excessively, I think indicates a big problem. So what is a normal amount of sighing? So right now what's considered normal is sighing once about every 5 minutes. Now if you're watching this and you're thinking, wait, I don't even sigh that much. Should I be sighing more? Don't stress out. I don't think you need to focus on how much you're sighing unless it's excessive. If you find yourself sighing like every minute, like, then I'm gonna show you how you can stop sighing as much and fix any dysfunctional breathing that you're having. Now, why do I think sighing too much is a problem? Well, people who are prone to more frequent sighing are also more likely to have panic disorder, anxiety, or feel stressed. And the reason behind all this could be that they are breathing wrong or breathing dysfunctionally. Now, some of you might not sigh that often, but when you get into a difficult situation, that's when you start to sigh more. So why do we sigh in the first place? Well, there's a couple reasons. The first is your body is trying to focus more on its exhale. And the second is your body is trying to get rid of CO2 or carbon dioxide. Every time you exhale, it actually triggers the parasympathetic response in your body, or the rest and relax mode part of your body. And anytime you inhale, it'll trigger the opposite. It'll trigger the sympathetic mode, or the fight or flight response. So people who chronically inhale more than they exhale tend to be more chronically stressed. And people that exhale more than they inhale are more normal. So when you sigh in response to being stressed out, your body is trying to trigger its parasympathetic mode to feel more relaxed. So the ideal ratio of inhaling and exhaling for humans is not 50-50. It's actually 40% on the inhale and 60% on the exhale. But people who are chronically stressed out actually have the opposite ratio. They tend to inhale at about 60% and exhale at about 40%. So when you regularly sigh throughout the day, it's not only a sign that you are stressed out, it's also a sign that you are breathing too much. And in turn, when you breathe too quickly, you end up putting your body into a fight or flight mode. And also what happens when you breathe too excessively is you deplete your body of CO2 or carbon dioxide. Many people think that CO2 is a waste product and we need to get rid of it from our body. But actually, our CO2 is just as important as our oxygen. So we don't get CO2 from the air around us. We get CO2 from our metabolism. So it gets built up in our body as we hold our breath. And we also get more of it from exercising. When your CO2 builds up to a certain level, that will trigger you to take your next breath. Now, the reason that CO2 is so important is because of something called the Bohr effect. Basically, what this means is, as you inhale this oxygen and it goes into your lungs, this oxygen will attach to a molecule called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein that is in our red blood cells, and it carries 4 oxygen molecules, and it will deliver this oxygen to all of our cells throughout our body. But in order for that oxygen to dissociate from that hemoglobin and actually end up into our cells, we need to have enough CO2, because our CO2 is what controls our blood's pH. And if our pH levels are off, then our oxygen can never detach from this hemoglobin and never end up into the right cells. So if your body constantly has a lower supply of CO2, then your body's going to end up feeling more and more breathless, because even though your lungs are getting this oxygen and your oxygen saturation is high, that's something that when you put a pulse oximeter on your finger, for example, it measures how saturated your hemoglobin is with oxygen. And for most people, it's between 95 and 100%, so it's pretty high. But even if your oxygen is saturated in your hemoglobin, it doesn't mean that it's actually going to your cells. And when your cells are deprived of oxygen, it triggers you to breathe more because it's trying to get more oxygen into the body. Because even though your oxygen saturation is high, you're still feeling breathless. Now, the other problem with this is, like I said, your CO2 level is a trigger to take the next breath. But once you start breathing more and more excessively, you start depleting your body of CO2. And what happens over time is the CO2 trigger starts to go down, where normally when your CO2 reaches this threshold, then your body will take the next breath. But over time, it'll come down to this threshold and then down to this threshold. And what's happening is your body's getting triggered to take the next breath sooner and sooner. And this is why people will feel breathless all the time, and why people will start to sigh throughout the day so much, because they're trying to deplete their body of CO2. So instead, what you need to do is if you find yourself sighing a lot throughout the day, you need to train your body to tolerate higher amounts of CO2. Because hyperventilating or breathing in more oxygen is not going to make a difference. It's actually going to make the problem worse. Instead, you got to focus on breathing less and being able to tolerate less oxygen in your lungs and higher amounts of CO2. It may seem counterintuitive, but this will actually end up delivering more oxygen to your cells. And in turn, it will also lower your stress levels and also lower the amount that you sigh throughout the day. Just like you can eat too much food or drink too much, you can also be breathing too much air. So the next time that you feel that urge to sigh, it would be better to try to resist that urge by holding it in or even swallowing. If you do end up actually sighing, then what you can do is after that exhale, just hold your breath for 5 to 10 seconds. This will allow that CO2 to build up more in your body. This isn't going to be an overnight fix, but over time, your body will start to adapt more to more CO2. Now, there are some other ways to train your body to start breathing less and tolerating more CO2 and less oxygen. The biggest thing that I think is going to help anyone, no matter what, is focusing on breathing through your nose at all times. And that includes while you are sleeping. So what I like to use when I'm sleeping is a mouth tape, which is literally just a piece of tape that I tape over my lips to encourage nasal breathing while I'm sleeping. You can also use a nasal dilator, which is literally a strip that goes over your nose to help keep your nose open. The mouth tape that I like is something called 3M micropore paper tape, which is literally a medical grade tape that you rip off a piece and you can tape over your lips. Now, some of you may be looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, how can I possibly breathe through my nose all night long? I'll probably just choke. Well, if your nose is stuffy a lot or you just feel like you can't properly breathe through your nose, I made some other videos specifically on how to unblock your nose. So I'm putting a link in the description below where I go step by step on how to do that. But breathing through your nose instead of your mouth will naturally slow down your breathing because you just cannot breathe as quickly in and out through your nose as you can through your mouth. So this is one of the simplest things you can start doing to improve your CO2 tolerance. There are also a ton of other benefits to breathing through your nose versus your mouth. Like you get a lot of filtering, you filter out a lot of viruses and bacteria and different dust and particles when you breathe through your nose that you do not get when you breathe through your mouth. You also humidify and temper the air, so you make it more gentle on your lungs, which makes it less likely to trigger allergies and asthma. And you also produce a molecule called nitric oxide, which is both a vasodilator and an antibacterial. So this will help prevent you from getting sick, and especially getting those tonsil and adenoid infections that are in that nasopharynx area. But it'll also dilate the blood vessels and it'll improve the gas exchange that goes on in your lungs, essentially making your breathing more efficient. Once you feel comfortable breathing through your nose more often, then you can proceed to actual breathing exercises to breathe less. The first exercise I like are breath holds. So someone who explained this really well is Patrick McKeown, who wrote a book called Oxygen Advantage. But basically, this is a good way you can actually gauge your CO2 tolerance and even your VO2 max level. And this isn't a normal breath hold. So what you do is you do a normal inhale and exhale. And then after the exhale, you're gonna hold your breath until you have your first urge to breathe. It's not going to be like a super strong urge. It's going to be a very subtle urge. So this could be as simple as one of your muscles contracting, or you feel that initial urge to take a breath in. And you're going to time how long you're able to hold your breath. So you shouldn't be dying to take a next breath when you're done. You should be able to resume normal breathing after this exercise is done. Your goal should be to get to 40 seconds doing this. Now, keep in mind, most athletes don't even get to 40 seconds. Most athletes only get about 20 seconds. Now, if your breath hold score is about 15 seconds or less, then this is a sign that you are probably stressed out and that you probably sigh more frequently than an average person. So your goal should be to try to improve this score. I would try to do this exercise once every morning. Just sit up, relax your muscles, and practice this exercise. Sometimes your score might fluctuate where it might come down a few seconds, it might come up a few seconds, but over time, your score should go up. And don't be discouraged if it takes a while. Even like a 5-second improvement in the score will go a really long way. Now, another exercise you can do is something called high altitude training, but in your own home. So we know when athletes are preparing for a big competition, a lot of times they go to Colorado or up in the mountains where we know that the oxygen levels are lower. And the reason they do that is because once they're done training there and they come back for their competition, then they're at a much higher advantage because they were so used to training in zones where there's depleted oxygen levels. And we also have a lot of evidence that people who live in higher altitudes tend to live longer than people that don't live in those altitudes. But you don't have to go up to these higher mountains to practice this high altitude training. You can literally practice this while you're going on a walk. So what you can do is next time you're going on a walk, first walk for a minute at a normal pace and see what your breathing is like. And then after that minute, do a normal inhale and exhale. And after the exhale, again, hold your breath. And while you're holding your breath, you're gonna walk as many paces as you can until you have like a medium to strong urge to breathe. Again, you're not gonna be dying to take the next breath, but you're gonna have a pretty strong urge to breathe in. Then you're gonna recover, preferably breathing only through your nose for 1 minute. And then you're gonna repeat this exercise 10 times. A good gauge to see if you held your breath long enough is if you can recover your breathing within 1 to 2 breaths. If it's taking longer than that, then next time try to not hold your breath as long. Once you feel more comfortable with that, you can even do the same breath holding exercise while you're jogging and cycling. Some track athletes will even practice this at the end of their sprints. Now, this is not something I would recommend you do right away. You should definitely work yourself up to getting to that point. Now, if you don't want to go for a run or for a walk, you can also practice another breathing exercise just sitting in your living room. So for this exercise, you should just sit up straight and try to relax all the muscles in your body. First, you want to focus on your breathing and try to engage your diaphragm. So try to breathe with your belly for about 1 minute and see how much air you normally breathe in and out. Then you're gonna breathe in and out slightly less until you get a subtle air shortage. Once you start feeling that air hunger where you wish you could take a slightly deeper breath, then you're doing this correctly. Keep up this air shortage for about 3 to 5 minutes if you can. And try to do this for 2 sets. To make it a little bit more difficult, you can also add some resistance to your belly to kind of train your diaphragm as well. Doing all this pretty regularly will not only increase your CO2 tolerance, and also lower your body's demand for oxygen, it will also end up delivering more oxygen to your cells. And we explained why earlier in the video. And again, this is gonna help lower your stress levels, lower the amount that you're sighing throughout the day, and also improve your VO2 max. Your VO2 max is one of the best gauges we have for your physical fitness. And this means that next time it's time for you to go for exercise or go for a run, you are going to be at a much higher advantage compared to where you were before. Because anytime we exercise, our breathing naturally increases. Our body's demand for oxygen goes up and our body's supply of CO2 goes up. So that will further increase our breathing rate. But if your breathing rate is already lower, that means you're going to be at a higher advantage when you start actually exercising, because you're going to start to feel out of breath way later on compared to where you were before. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video. So if you do sigh a lot throughout the day, make sure you try out these exercises and let me know if they help you. And even if you don't sigh a lot, if you start to feel like stressed out or something like that, all these exercises are still gonna help you as well. You could be so good at brushing and flossing. You could even be brushing after every single meal and flossing after every single meal, but you might still end up with that gunk on those bottom front teeth. That nasty buildup, especially on those lower front teeth, is called tartar or calculus. That's basically when you get this plaque or this biofilm